Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart, and this time we're going to be talking about Metroid Dread Report Volume 5 and the latest trailer that just came out yesterday, another glimpse of Dread. We got a fair bit of new information about Metroid Dread. We're getting it about every week or so. The hype is building up for this game. We're learning more and more about it, and everything we learn is really awesome. The gameplay seems really fluid, the visuals look amazing, the lore, the atmosphere, everything about Metroid Dread is just looking to be top notch. I am very excited to talk more about Metroid Dread. That's what we're doing today, breaking it all down, coming up with some theories, analyzing what we're seeing here, and coming to some level of conclusion until we get even more information to figure out even more things about this presumably amazing game that's coming out October 8th. Now, before we jump into things, let me very quickly talk about my social media. You may see a few different things here on the screen. You can check that all out. It is linked in the description below. And of course, if you like what you're seeing here, you can subscribe. So what I'm going to be doing here is just looking through the Metroid Dread Report, reading a few of the different excerpts here, analyzing a little bit, coming up with potentially some theories, and then we'll be going into the trailer, looking over that, analyzing it, and breaking that down as well. So then, with the Metroid Dread 5th report, what do they talk about? Well, they're talking about Samus herself and her weaponry and such. So let's first read what they have to say about Samus and her beginnings. Growing up, Samus Aran. Samus lost her family as a young child after a devastating attack by the space pirates. The Chozo took young Samus under their wing, pun intended probably, and raised her on planet Zebes. She received a DNA transplant from this bird-like species that altered her physiology and allowed her to adapt to this harsh new environment. Before striking out on her own, Samus was once enlisted in and trained by the Galactic Federation Army. The true identity of the face under her helmet remains shrouded in mystery across the galaxy. So some of the things that are being brought up here I think are really important. Yes, it's sort of telling us more about the lore of Samus, but it's also sort of giving us some, I think, important context here. Because what we've seen so far of the game, there's definitely a lot of Chozo things going on, and explaining that Samus's roots are from the Chozo. They helped to raise her. They gave her a DNA transplant of the Chozo. She's heavily related to them. That's important going into Metroid Dread because there's a lot of Chozo ruins, supposedly living Chozo as well. Maybe some good Chozo, maybe some evil Chozo. They're going to be playing a vital role to the story here, so keeping this in mind I think is very important. But what's also very important is Samus' relationship with the Galactic Federation. They are the reason she goes down to planet ZDR. They are the reason that there are things going on with the EMMI, and they also have a lot of issues going on before Metroid Dread. With Fusion, there were some issues as well, and all these different elements could become a big factor with the story with Metroid Dread, so I think it's very smart of them to bring up Samus's roots with both of these different factions. But let's continue on here. Transmission from the dev team. Samus is a true professional who takes a quiet and calm approach to her work. Because of this, you might think that she's a cold-hearted person, but you'd be mistaken. In actuality, Samus is a woman with a very kind heart, as evidenced by her show of mercy to a Metroid hatchling while on a mission to eradicate the enigmatic species. Perhaps the hatchling sensed a nurturing nature within Samus when it imprinted on her. So what they're alluding to here is what happened in Metroid 2, or Metroid Samus Returns, the remake we got on 3DS back in 2017, which had a number of enhancements in gameplay-wise, but it also had a few more little story elements there as well. But the big thing they're referring to is at the end of the game, Samus was sent into this planet to eradicate all the Metroids, but after she took out the Metroid Queen, she found one more Metroid hatchling, and it was a little baby Metroid, and the Metroid sort of saw Samus as its mother, and that Metroid becomes very important in future Metroid games. But it's just to show that Samus isn't necessarily a cold-hearted cyborg. There is feeling to her, there is emotion to her. She is not a black and white character. There is a lot of gray there, and there are going to be elements where she's told to do one thing and maybe she does another. Metroid Fusion has a lot to do with that as well. So these are important things to be bringing up because this all could be playing a role with the story. Perhaps the Galactic Federation will tell Samus to do something else again, and then she may be forced to make a decision that will be different from what the Galactic Federation wants, which could bring more strife between the factions. But then when you'll take into consideration that there is a Chozo here, there's a lot potentially going on here. There's a lot of different curves and turns the story could take, so I think it's very important that they bring up this lore behind Samus and who she is. But let's move on to some of the gameplay stuff they start talking about here. Samus' right arm is completely integrated with her powerful and iconic arm cannon, which can fire 2 types of weapons, rapid fire beam attacks and powerful missiles. Because the arm cannon is so deeply integrated, Samus can toggle between weapon classes at will. In the Metroid Dread game, you can attack from nearly any angle while running, jumping, or holding onto certain walls and ledges. And I think this is the real big point to bring up here. I'm not going to read every little thing here because it's kind of more of the same, basically. But what they sort of highlight throughout this report is that Samus is very mobile, very agile. She can do things with momentum and fluidity that she has not done in previous games. If you look at the gameplay, you can kind of see a good glimpse of that. It looks great. There's different things she can do. They show off a few shots of the grapple beam here, but then we move further down, they also talk about other things. So for example, the melee counter. This action creates an opportunity for Samus to stun an enemy by striking it right as it's about to attack. It's successful. The stunned enemy is open to getting hit with a powerful follow-up attack. Samus can dash counter while running too. Another point to bring up here is that even not just with shooting, but her melee attacks now have forward motion, which give her more momentum and fluidity, which speeds up the gameplay, which I'm going to assume is going to make it feel all the more satisfying. But continuing on with this idea, we have the Morph Ball. So they show different things of the Morph Ball here. You saw that Samus was able to do the little dive and then seamlessly transition into Morph Ball. All of this is about making her momentum fluid, and that is awesome. They bring up how you can go into Morph Ball mode by pressing down on the control stick, but also by pressing ZL, offering you more options for exploration and transitioning, which again just offers more fluidity and momentum and agility to Samus, and that is exciting because this game is going to feel really, really good. Now with the jumping, it's pretty much standard fare here. It's all very quick. It all compiles together to the overall point we're making here that, yeah, Samus is going to feel really good to control in this game, and it's going to be awesome. Just looking at the footage here, like, I love the environment. So you can see that when Samus stands on the platforms, they sort of react to her movement. They're not just completely solid. That's pretty nice. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Tropical Freeze, actually, the Donkey Kong game that came out on Wii U, which is also on Switch. But anyway, let's move on here to the Eon Abilities. They show off some of the Eon Abilities. We've already known about this as well, but the new thing here is that when they showed it before, you were stationary, as you see in the footage here, but when you see in this part, she can jump, she can move a little bit, and that just offers a little bit more options here. Like, when you are in close quarters, you do have options. You don't just have to blow your cover. So that's also a nice little element to see there. Now they show off some art and imagery of the power suit. That's all great, but I think it's interesting that they talk about the power suit, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but let's just kind of read what they have to say here. The power suit that Samus wears is based on Chozo technology and was created specifically for her. Incorporating ability upgrades can expand the functionality of the power suit performance and the arm cannon's functions. Moving on to the transmission part, Samus' power suit is a one-of-a-kind article made with the superior technology of the Chozo. While the series has seen various forms of Samus suits, the fully powered suit from Metroid Zero Mission game for the Game Boy Advance system obtained by overcoming Chozodia Ruin's trial is the basis for all of these. That was a mouthful. The events of the previous game, Metroid Fusion, also for Game Boy Advance system, changed a lot of things for Samus and her suit, but this time we're using a new power suit to imagine what would be beyond Metroid Fusion. They show a few more images we've seen before. The Metroid were created to be the natural enemy of the X-Parasite by receiving an emergency dose of the Metroid vaccine, created from a cell culture previously sourced from the Metroid hatchling. Samus became the only living creature who cannot be harmed by the X-Parasite. Because of her immunity, Samus alone is dispatched to planet ZDR to investigate the possible presence of the X-Parasite, a life form thought to have been eradicated. Transmission from the dev team. The X-Parasite is a terrifying creature capable of infesting any living thing, causing it to die, and then mimicking its host using the genetic information it copies. It's no exaggeration to say that the X is the strongest and most odious of life forms, as it instinctively prioritizes the preservation and expansion of its species, repeatedly dividing and merging to mimic stronger individuals. However, the only thing that can nullify its ability is the Metroid, which was created to be its natural enemy. Since the Metroid went extinct prior to the events of Metroid Dread, the only one who can rival the X is Samus, as she now has Metroid DNA in her. So according to the story, Samus is the only Metroid left. She is a Metroid because of the DNA within her, so she is the one who can combat the X Parasite. This is something we talked about in our previous analysis. This is something others have talked about as well, but this is definitely an element here. It's definitely very important. As you can probably tell, there are different sort of factions and factors going on that sort of converge upon each other. You have the X Parasite, you have the Metroid and the history with that and Samus, and you have the Chozo who created the Metroid who also raised Samus, and then you also have the Galactic Federation, and all of these different elements are all intertwined here, and they're going to be pivotal sort of plot points in the story for Metroid Dread, and that's all very exciting. But now let's take a look at this Glimpse of Dread trailer. Before we do, I want to read this last transmission here. In the second half of this video, why is Samus wearing a different suit than the other one started with? Stay tuned. We're going to get to that. So let's now check out the trailer. First of all, I just love that they're just giving us more and more footage. We are seeing Samus' ship, full 3D visuals there, talking about the X Parasite. Here you see a clear shot at the beginning of the game, opening cutscene. Samus is in her orange suit. It looks visually stunning. The music is enthralling. They show off the X Parasite because that's important. There we are. We see Samus doing more control stuff. It does feel a little hectic. You see Samus flying through there, dodging asteroids. They show off the EMMI. Samus is there to reacquire them because they've been lost. They are from the Galactic Federation. But this is where things get really interesting. Some nice visuals there.
Treat our lost assets with care, lady.
That is Adam. That is actual voice acting.
In T-10.
Or voice acting. This game has voice acting, which seemed predictable, but hearing Adam's voice, hearing how robotic it was, that presumably is how Adam sounded in Metroid Fusion. Now keep in mind, this Adam is not the same Adam from before. This is a clone, an artificial intelligent clone of Adam. But here we see Samus flew in to the planet with an orange suit. Some time passes, and now she wakes up from being collapsed in the middle of this planet with an entirely different looking suit. And what's going to happen next? Well, she's clearly tired and exhausted. Something bad happened to her. Now we see what appears to be a destroyed looking Chozo statue. So that is very, very, very interesting. This is all important, I think. It's all important because where they're talking about Samus and her roots with the Chozo. All of this is going to play a vital role to the story here. What's going on here? Why is that Chozo statue destroyed? I believe that is foreshadowing. I believe that is suggesting dark things related to the Chozo. Not saying that all the Chozo are evil, but there will be dark things related to the Chozo and Samus's roots that will all be intertwined here. The X Parasite is clearly a big sort of plot point here that will also be brought up. That is what affected Samus so significantly in Metroid Fusion, the prior game. But of course, Samus has that Metroid DNA, which was cultured from this Metroid that she saved from Samus Returns, which also saved her back in Super Metroid. It's all hugely related. But then if we go back to Metroid Fusion again, the Galactic Federation wanted Samus to do certain things. She made other decisions which were kind of against the wishes of the Federation, which will add some strife there. But yet here, they send Samus in to save the EMMI, apparently, reacquire those assets. So there's different elements going on here. It's hard to say what's exactly happening. But what's clear is that something changes Samus. She has this blue and white suit. That's what it's sort of been introduced as, like the sort of go-to suit to start off Metroid Dread. If you go to the beginning of the Nintendo Treehouse, the first part, they literally tell us the beginning moments of the game are in that treehouse, and Samus is in the blue. Yet the opening cutscene in the game is in the orange, but we see her wake up in the blue. What happens here? Hard to say for sure, but a lot of Metroid games have Samus start off with a fair bit of power-ups, and then she loses them. And then she has to reacquire them and then obtain new ones throughout the game. Because these are Metroid games, it's a Metroidvania. A lot of the gameplay is about finding power-ups and expanding upon that. So it's easy for the developer to simply strip Samus of all of her previous powers from previous games. That way she can acquire them again and then some new ones as well. So I'm pretty sure this is mostly for gameplay reasons, but obviously they've also made it a story element here because she goes into the planet, something happens, and she loses presumably some of her powers, because that orange suit looks a lot like where she was at the end of Fusion, which is a more powered up version. This blue one is more reminiscent of how she started in Fusion, so it's almost like a reset there. But granted, they also suggest that Samus' suit has changed so much since then, but still, in terms of the coloring, it is similar. Now, what's going to happen here? Samus is going to get stronger. She's going to progress through and she's going to get stronger. But why did that happen? What caused Samus to get hurt in the way she was hurt? Was she ambushed potentially? I think that is a strong possibility. I think potentially the Galactic Federation sent her in there not because they actually wanted her to reacquire those assets. It's possible that they are trying to get rid of her. Based off what happened in Fusion, they may no longer believe that she is something that they can rely on, and they want to get rid of her. Another possibility is that the Federation still isn't doing that. The Federation's still on her side. But perhaps these evil Chozo we're theorizing about are there. We do see this ruined Chozo sort of structure. It's implying that there are Chozo of some sort. We have seen some imagery of militarized Chozo. We have seen hieroglyphs of an ancient Chozo army on this planet. We have seen living Chozo with some of the trailers for Metroid Dread. There are Chozo here. So maybe the Chozo sent Samus and they ambushed her. Potentially. Maybe it was the EMMI. Maybe it was the Parasite. There's a lot of different potentials here. If I had to bet, I'm going to say that it was related to an antagonistic side of the Chozo. That's what I think caused Samus's sort of power down, what's going to collapse her. That's what's going to sort of throw her off guard and surprise her. She's probably not expecting to see living Chozo because they were thought to be extinct. So that's my sort of prediction here. Obviously, we'll see as more evidence presents itself, but that's what I think is going on. But what do you guys think? What exactly is going on with Samus' suit? Why did it go from orange to blue? I'm sure we'll find out soon, but tell me what you guys think in the comments below. Anyways, everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.